morning. This is Ro with Bald&Balding, and we are here with Ray Wenck at the Cincinnati Comic Expo. Ray, good morning.
Morning.
So, looking around your table here, I'm struck by the tremendous amount of books that you have. How many books do you have here?
When I just put out Change Up out there in front of you about a week ago, that was number 60.
660.
60.
And you've been doing this how long?
For about 12 years.
What is your typical writing day? Is that's I mean, you're talking about 5 books a year?
Uh, well, early on it was 3 or 4. Now I probably put out 8 to 10. You get into a flow, you get into a process. It certainly became much easier once I retired. But I usually will start writing anywhere from 6 to 8 in the morning until 2 o'clock. Then I'll take time off for real life, and then later on at night, I take care of some of the business aspects of it. So it's a full-time job.
And have to ask, what did you do? What did you retire from?
I was a school teacher for 36 years. I also owned and operated a restaurant for 25 years.
So you've had a lot of free time.
Yeah. I'm pretty much workaholic, which is what I'm doing, and which is why I've got 60 books out now.
So I got to ask what you taught in school.
I was a physical education teacher, then got my degree in special education. Went for my administrative degree and decided that was just sheer stupidity on my part. There was no way I wanted to be an administrator.
Here, I thought you were going to tell me you had like an English or
No,
English lit.
no. In fact, I tell everybody if I ever knew, if I'd have known that at this stage of my life I was going to be a published author, I would have paid better attention in high school English.
So what genres do you, and I use the plural there, do
Yeah,
you write in?
I primarily write post-apocalyptic, which is how I made my name, but I write mysteries, which is my up-and-coming genre. Through the times, I've written some fantasy, some paranormal. I dabbled a little bit in choose your own, well, pick-a-paths, which were like the old choose your own adventures. And most recently, I was invited to get involved in a anthology in science fiction with a very well-known author, Craig Martell. It was actually that I show that and you bring that up. It was after attending one of those conferences that I realized that I was just spinning my wheels and I was just throwing books out there just to have them out. It was then I realized that if I was really going to do this and be successful at it, I needed to run it like a business. And ever since then, um, things have been very, very different.
So what changed? What was the takeaway from the 20 books conference that made you go, there it is?
Whenever I've gone to conferences before, I always spent time going to all the craft sessions, working on my craft. Always trying to improve yourself. This time, I stayed with all business-oriented sessions. Uh, some were time management. Most dealt with marketing and understanding it better. I know I dabbled in marketing early on, but I really didn't know anything about it. Um, Once I started getting that together, um, I saw almost an immediate response. Sales just picked up from there. Um, Also worked on website, newsletters, just a whole um, ton of little things that you never take into consideration, but once you put them into play, they make such a big difference.
Do you sell most of your books online through like Amazon, or do you do it through your own site or shows like this?
Um, it's a combination of both, but the majority of my sales have been coming from ebooks and Kindle Unlimited. I also have about a third of the books are wide, um, which eventually they all will be, but it's a process where you move from from one site to another, just trying to reach as many readers as possible. I like doing the shows because it gives me an opportunity to meet people. Um, it's a good way to make a solid connection so that if they buy book one, there's a good chance they're going to keep coming back to buy the next ones in the series, which very pleasantly, I've seen 4 people just yesterday come back and get the next book in a series.
Nice.
So it's nice. Um, I don't do anywhere near as many as I used to. I was out 20 to 25 shows a year. Now I only do about 6 to 8. But that's Amazon still remains the bulk, primarily because they just have the biggest market share.
Do you do a lot of your ads through Amazon?
No, now that's interesting. I do not like the structure of the Amazon ads, and I personally don't see how. I mean, I know there's people out there that swear that you can make money by it, but all I've ever seen is I've seen sales, but it costs you so much to make the sales that you're really not gaining anything. Most of my advertising goes through either paid promo sites or the Facebook ads, which are much more reasonable to handle.
So for any potential authors that might be out there wondering, what are some of the paid promo sites that, I mean, we all know there's a ton of them, right? But
There really are. Um, there is um, a chart out there someplace. It was emailed to me, and it gives a tier level of the best ones. Some of those were like e-reader news, which is expensive, but it's also one of the better ones. Of course, BookBub. Um, um, and then it's tiered down depending on their reach and their cost. There's probably in my rotation I use about a dozen, and I'll switch them off each time.
now you said earlier you do 10 books a year or so. Are they all same genre, or do
Oh
you
no,
mix that up?
no, I uh, the the Random Survival, the Road series, has just taken off like crazy online. I did this was one of the things I learned when I was at the conference. I did a quick release with these. I wrote 5 of them, and then I released one every 2 weeks, and they took off. It was just amazing to see the sales because it was like, oh my God, you can make money doing this after 10 years of struggles. But because of that, and these are a little bit shorter, I need to put out 3 to 4 of these a year to make sure that the audience stays. I get almost the very next day, once I release one, I get people messaging me, when's the next one? When's the next one? Which is a nice problem to have, but it's also putting a lot of pressure on. The problem with having this many genres and this many series is you're obligated to put out another one, at least one each year in those series, or you lose your readers. So if I'm putting out maybe, let's say, 3 in the Road series, in the original Random Survival series, which is the one that made Amazon's top 20, I put one out a year in this. In my mystery series, which I have 2, I put one book out a year in each of those. And then usually there's a slot or 2 open for something new. Um, and I've really roped myself into a bad situation with what I just released. The editor has something. Um, it's going to end up being this massive volume that I think it's going to be 6 separate series, all based off this one volume. So now I'm going to need another one in each one of those. So I'm probably going to be a little late on some of them.
Well, it's not hard to understand why. So I got to ask. I'm obligated to ask. Plotter or pantser? I think I know the answer.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a pantser.
Oh,
Oh no, I'm a pantser. I enjoy having it kind of be organic as it flows, through me to the page. I'm reading it with all this excitement, just as a reader might, which to me makes it better for the reader, because if I'm excited writing it, the reader is going to feel that same excitement when they're reading it. I don't want to know what's happening in advance. Now, are there times where subconsciously I've already had an idea where it's going? Yeah, but sometimes it goes in a different direction that I never expected. Um, Book 3 of my fantasy series, the Jeremy Klein series, took one twist, and then yeah, that's one. It took one twist and then came back in another direction, and I never saw either one of them. But when I was done, I just sat back and said, "Yeah." And if I have that feeling, the reader's got a good chance of having that feeling too.
Uh, you surprised me there because I would have thought with that many different stories going at one time that you would have had something kind of written out. So,
Well, let me back up a step with that. I do chart. I don't plot, but when I introduce new characters, I have to write them down in a folder, in a booklet. Actually, I've got it here someplace, because otherwise, especially with the Random Survival of the Road series, which I just submitted book 10 to the editor, and I'm halfway through book 11. I'm trying to get one book ahead so it frees up some of my time. Um, with 9 books previous and using a lot of those same characters, I have to remember where they were left off, what their current situation is, um, you know, which group they're in, because I'll split them in separate groups. And so I have to keep track of all that. But that's usually after the fact. Once I write it, I go and I start doing this. If I introduce a new character, I got to write it down, because otherwise I'm going to get to the end and wonder what happened to this guy. So, yeah, I keep a lot of notes, but I don't plot.
so when you sit down to write for your 8 hours in the morning, do you just say, okay, today I'm going to write fantasy, and then the next day say, okay, I'm going to write whatever, or
No, unless I've got a contractual obligation, or I've already given a schedule of when a book is released, I stay with one book until it's done. I usually write 5 to 6,000 words a day, 5 days a week. So for a 60,000 to 65,000 word novel, I can usually get that out in 2, maybe 3 weeks, and have it to the editor.
you use the same editor for all your books?
I do now.
He must love you. He must
Oh
send you
well,
like a huge Christmas gift every year.
yeah, but there there's also some negatives with that, because it's a lady. In fact, she was my editor when I was traditionally published, and when they went out of business, I sought her out, and she worked out a nice deal for me. And I told her I was going to be sending her 6 to 7 books a year. I lied. It's quite a bit more, but she just sent me an email yesterday saying, "Okay, just so I don't get lost here, here's the books I have, and here's the schedule of what we want done." Right, and she's got 5 of them right now.
Wow.
So you got the 60 here, and she's got 5 of them. Plus, I've got 2 finished ones on my laptop that I'm submitting for some reason to traditional publishers.
So all of your books are right now are indie published?
Yeah, when I first started, I got contracts from 2 different publishers for my 2 series at the time. One handled the mystery, and the other one was handling the post-apocalyptic. I enjoyed both of them, and it was a learning experience, but it became obvious early on that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I just threw the books to them, and they told me what I was supposed to do next. After, um, now I'm not even sure how long it was, but Random Survival, this one, just took off. It had reached number 20 in genre, and I think number 96 overall in Amazon. And I got that first royalty check from the publisher and thought, oh my gosh. And 3 months later, just when they were about to put book 2 out, they announced they were going out of business. By the end of the year, the other publisher announced the same thing. So within 1 year, I had 13 books that had been published back in my hands. And because they'd been published, very few other publishers were ever going to touch them. So I was kind of forced into the indie world and had to learn real fast. And boy, did I make some major mistakes. But you learn, you move on. And right now, with the way sales are going, I really don't see any reason to go back to traditional publishing. And yet, for some silly reason, I am submitting some of my mysteries to them. Uh, I don't know, maybe because for validation, I don't know why.
I think you've got enough books to validate. I think you're all right. Uh, I think you could do it just to save the time on organizing covers. Though I was just looking at these, like, oh my God, it just the amount of work it must take to keep all that straight. So, just to wrap up here real quick, if you were going to give some advice to someone who is pretty new to the indie publishing game or writing or whatever it is, what would be the best piece of advice you would give them?
Wow, I'm not sure that there's one. The first, I get people come to the table all the time and say, I want to be a writer too. And I always ask them the one question: what do writers do? And half of them stand there staring at me like I just, asked them to give me 40 digits in pi or something. Um, but, you know, the other half get it. Now, those are the ones that have a chance. Writers write. Well, are you writing? Sit down. My first writing group used to have a thing called BOC, or BIC, BIC, not BOC, BIC, butt in chair. Um, and if you're not putting your butt in chair for a certain period in a day or a week, you're not really writing, and it's never going to happen. Um, I always try to tell people, pick 20 minutes a day, 2 days a week to work on your writing. And after a while, as that story begins to advance, you'll find you're spending more and more time doing it. It's getting that initial start, I think. And sometimes it's just a matter of just sitting down and forcing yourself to do that initial session. It's fun. It's a hobby. It grows on you. Um, if I could be left alone just to write, I'd be ecstatic. But then you have all the business aspects that help pay the bills. So, um, yeah, I mean, getting started. But then the actually two things were suggested to me, and this is what first made things change for me and led to my first publishing contract. I was told to join a professional writers group, a local group, not an online one, so you have interaction, especially a group that had experienced and published authors in it, which I did. And the second was to go to a professional writers conference, which I did. And both of those made a difference. And within 3 months after doing both of those, I got my first contract. So it's a matter of spending the time and putting forth the effort.
Awesome. Ray, thank you very much. I
Sure.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good luck this weekend.
Thanks.